If you want to get into real estate, you need to make at least $126,000 per year. And that's just to afford the average house in 2023. But with interest rates hitting 8% and less properties being listed on the market, can you really build wealth with real estate in today's market? And as an investor myself, with someone who's bought over 46 rental properties across Utah, Arizona, Tennessee, Virginia, and Florida, real estate is the reason that me and my wife were able to become financially free. Now, the thing is, me and my wife were able to buy our properties when rates were at 4 to 5%. This gave us more breathing room and more margin for error compared to today where rates are almost double what they used to be. So what do I do if I were you and just getting started? Well, in today's video, I want to share with you the 3 steps on how I would start my own real estate journey in 2023 while everyone else is scared to invest. The first step you need to do before you invest into real estate is analyze buyer intent and also do market research. Now, whatever real estate model you're interested in, like wholesale, BRRRR, fix and flip, subject to, Airbnb, etc., you want to take a look at what people are talking about in the industry. And if you really want to skyrocket your success, we have to take a closer look. So the average home price in 2023, we're looking at an average home price of $410,000 at an 8% interest rate. So on average, first-time home buyers are putting down about 6% for the down payment. So that's going to be roughly $24,600. So including closing costs, let's call it $30,000. So for that example, the mortgage costs, including PMI, is going to roughly be about $3,200 a month. And as far as debt to income ratios go, banks don't want to see more than 43%. So this means you have to have a household income of at least $126,000 per year and have a minimum of $40,000 in savings to afford the average house right now. So considering those numbers, only the top 20% of Americans can actually afford a house like this. Even if you can afford an 8% mortgage in 2023, more than likely, you still want to pull the trigger because you still have to pay more in interest than what the actual house costs. Now, with that being said, everyone in the real estate community is discussing 2 options. So the first thing is to get an interest rate at 8%, and they can negotiate with the seller for a lower purchase price and then put the difference towards your closing costs. Wait 1 or 2 years for interest rates to cool down, refinance, and then get a lower interest rate mortgage, and then you're done. Or number 2 is to do nothing and wait for rates to come down. Now, that tells us something really important. There's much less buyer intent because people are scared to invest and would rather wait 1 or 2 years for rates to drop so they can buy a property. So what happens to the other side of real estate and people looking to sell their property? Now, because interest rates are so high, homeowners who are looking to sell their house are not motivated to sell right now. Now, you might be asking yourself why, and it's because if they end up selling, they need to move out and get another home. And no one's going to willingly trade their 3 to 4% interest rate for an 8% rate right now. And that's the exact same reason that nobody wants to buy their house as well. So now you've got some sellers who can't afford to not sell their property. And that's because they have a low payment or they've paid off their mortgage entirely. Now, for other sellers, they had to move out of state due to a job change or some other life-changing event. So they list their properties for sale, but again, less and less people have interest in buying due to the interest rates right now. So this means 2 things. So number 1, every single month they're burning cash, and this is until someone comes and buys their property. Or number 2, they list their property for rent and then wait for a tenant to come and rent their property out. So this is your market research. Now that we've done this, let's go into step number 2 and analyze your current options. So the way I see it is you have 6 options. So number 1, you have wholesale. Number 2 is house hacking. Number 3, you have BRRRR, and that's the traditional. Number 4, we also have BRRRR, but subject to. Number 5, we have fix and flip. And then number 6, we have the bridge method. So let's first talk about option number 1, which is wholesale. Now, if you don't know what this is, it's essentially putting a property under contract. You got this property under contract for $350,000, and then you sign that contract to an end buyer for, let's call it $375,000. So the difference between these 2 numbers comes out to $25,000. So this would be your assignment fee that you get paid out. So wholesale is a good way to make money from real estate, but it's not real estate. Because basically your job is to go and find these deals so they can assign it to the end buyer. In my opinion, it's just a higher paying full-time job. Every single month you have to start at 0, you have to make a bunch of cold calls to sellers and buyers and then do this all over again every single month. And it denies the whole purpose of real estate, which is spend as little time as possible with it and make stable monthly income. And again, in today's market, you're guaranteed to put a lot of effort in to find that one buyer who's gonna go and buy this property all cash or even get it at an 8% rate. So option number 2 is house hacking. So house hacking basically means that you live in an ugly, undervalued multifamily unit, anywhere from 1 to 4 units. So let's say you get a 4-plex property and then you live in one side and then you rent out the rest. Now, this is a great way to get started in real estate. In fact, this is how I got started. Now, the ideal goal is that these 3 units are going to be paying for your entire mortgage every single month, while you still retain the property and you're living for free. So let me give you a quick example. So this 4-plex that you see on the screen, me and my wife bought it back in 2018. So we bought it for $380,000 with a 4.5% rate. And because we're living in one of the units, we were able to get it with the owner-occupied 5% down payment. So for the down payment, including closing costs, we put about $25,000 to get into this property. And my monthly payment came out to $2,300 a month. So let me show you how much we're getting paid for the other units. So unit number 2 was paying us $850 a month. Unit 3 was paying us $750 a month. And then unit 4 was paying us $800 per month. So these 3 units brought in $2,400 a month in income. And that covered most of our entire expenses every single month. After utilities, the mortgage, and other fees. So we're living in this fourplex essentially for free. Now this sounds great and all, but here's the thing. This model was possible to do 5 years ago. But today, this same fourplex is now worth $734,000. At an 8% rate, this fourplex is gonna cost you $6,000 a month, which is 2.6 times more than what it was back in 2018. Even if you live in one of the units and let's say your ideal goal is to only pay $1,000 per month, you need these other 3 units to bring in at least $5,000 a month in income. And sure, we all know that real estate can be appreciating if you buy in the right markets, but salaries have barely increased since 2018. So logically speaking, there are gonna be fewer people who are gonna want to rent out these units, which puts a lot of pressure on your end. Now let's talk about the traditional BRRRR method. So here's what BRRRR stands for. First is buy, which means buy an older rundown property at a good price. And then you rehab the property. So that means you fix it up and improve the old house. And then you rent, which means you find a tenant to rent out the new house for a monthly income. And then you go and refinance the property. So that basically means you get a new loan with a now higher value house. And then the last step is you just repeat that process. So that's where you get this BRRRR from. Now the cool part is that you can use a private money lender to fund the entire deal without using any of your own money. So let me give you an example with one of my units. So me and my partner bought this duplex in 2019 in Utah. So the purchase price came out to $115,000. And I borrowed this money from a private money lender to buy them property cash. We then use a credit card to pay $28,000 for repairs and obviously increase the value of the property. So once the entire property is fixed up, the new price of the house came out to $200,000. So I then did a cash out refinance where we went to the bank and we're able to get a new loan of 80% of the new value of $200,000. So we got a new loan for $160,000. So using this new loan, we went and paid off the hard money lender. We paid back the credit card debt. And after everything, we were left with a few $1,000. So after doing this entire process, we were left with a few $1,000 to retain this property. This is essentially what a lot of people preach when it comes to real estate. You find a good property, you pitch it to a private money lender, you add value to it, refinance, pay back the lender, and now you have a cash flow producing property with $0 into the deal. And you can go on and do this entire thing all over again until you build enough monthly cash flow so you can replace your 9-to-5 income. But in 2023, can you really do this strategy effectively? Because home prices have increased and there's more money involved. And sure, you can still find a deal and go through a private money lender, but if you're just starting out in real estate, there are too many moving parts every step of the way. Because you can go out there, pay too much for the property and not accurately estimate the after repair value of the property, or even buy in the wrong location. Or for the rehab, you can underestimate the repair costs or hire the wrong contractors. And the more delays there are, the more money you're going to pay in fees. For the refinance part, you might have the property not appraised as much as expected. So you may not be able to secure good financing terms. Or for the rent part, you might have vacancy periods and bad tenants who damage the property or don't pay rent. Even if your interest rates are at 4%, you're still going to have to do a lot of things to make this work. And it's completely opposite of what people say. Real estate is passive, buy real estate. Let's talk about the next strategy, which is subject to. So the cool thing about subject to investing is you can keep the seller's old low mortgage rate when you buy the property. So this is where you're going to go and contact the seller, typically where they're distressed, but instead of buying their property and then going and getting another mortgage rate at 8%, you're going to ask the seller to assign you their mortgage and then you pay a cash amount and then you pay their mortgage, but the property is going to be yours. And just to clarify here, you're not going to go and pay the mortgage under your name. You're going to send the money to the seller and then they're going to pay the mortgage on your behalf. So your name is going to be on the property and not the mortgage. So that way you can keep benefiting from super low mortgage rates on your deals. Now the caveat to this model is similar to BRRRR because there's more money involved, there's a lot of moving parts, and here location is also limited because you have to find a specific seller that has a 4% mortgage rate. So say you want to turn that 4% mortgage into an Airbnb, you have to be really careful about the location because you want to choose a property that is in a desirable area and is likely to attract guests. And if you buy a property subject to, you may have fewer options in terms of location. And with subject to, you have to do a lot more work because you need to go through a bunch of properties and find sellers that have some sort of distress. Now let's talk about fix and flip. So fix and flip is a popular way of making money in real estate. Now this is all about buying a distressed property where you fix it up and then you sell it for a profit. Now the biggest thing about fix and flip is you have to buy the property right because you have to have enough margin where you can make money on the sale of the property. You have to look at these deals really carefully. You also have to budget carefully. You also have to have a really good contractor that can stay on time and also on budget. Now one key thing to keep in mind is understanding the local real estate market because you really have to understand what changes appeal to the potential buyers in the area. So you have to constantly be updating what the end buyer wants. And then after the renovation, you need to sell the property quickly aggressively to make the most money. So that means pricing it right and using good marketing strategies. Now, this can be a really great way to make a bunch of money, but it's not without a bunch of challenges, especially in 2023. So let's talk about a couple. Number one is the increased property prices. The cost of buying a property has significantly increased in recent years, and this makes it more difficult to find a property that you can flip for a profit. Number two is the cost of construction. Materials are more expensive, labor is more expensive. So this really is just simple math. It's just more expensive to renovate properties. Number three is that there's a low inventory of houses available. The supply of homes for sale is low, which means that there's a lot of competition for each property. And number four is you're going up against super high interest rates, which means there are going to be less buyers and it makes it more expensive to borrow money. So that leaves us with our final strategy, which is called the bridge method. So the bridge method is a new strategy that I discovered back in 2021. So it's essentially combining the power of real estate, but without the need to buy a property. So the bridge method is all about finding undervalued properties for rent. You then go and turn it into a short-term rental. And if you do the market research right, then you can charge a premium for this property. And at the end of each month, you can make 10 times more cash flow than the traditional way of doing real estate. Because you don't have to buy the property, this means you don't have to put a bunch of money down. So you can avoid getting an 8% rate or using a private money lender. And this model is great because you don't have to worry about how high interest rates are today. In fact, we encourage it because that's the best time to do the bridge method. Because interest rates are so high, you already know that sellers can't sell their property because nobody wants to buy them. So these same sellers have to rent out their properties, which gives us a perfect opportunity to run the bridge method while everyone else is scared to invest. And of course, like anything else, it's not that easy, it's also not free. And yes, you're not buying the property, but you do need at least $10,000 to get started. And this money is going to go towards furniture, new amenities to make it suitable for a short-term rental. And this is to ensure that the property is kept in good condition and also that the operations are running smoothly without your presence. So here's an example so you can understand this entire process better. So the property that you see on the screen is one of the properties that we got back in Arizona in 2021. So I put $26,000 into new furniture, amenities, etc. We then launched it as a short-term rental, and in 30 days, it generated $15,000 in revenue, $9,000, which was clear profit. And by the way, this property alone brings in more cash flow than my 40 rental units combined. And I've got two main people that handle everything on site. The first person is my handyman. So he's on call to go and do random tasks or repair things as needed. And then number two, we have the cleaners. They go and clean the property after each guest. They're gonna be your eyes and ears for the property. I then have one other person that works fully remote, and that's my virtual assistant. So they manage all the guest communication. They also coordinate with the handyman and also cleaners. They essentially run the entire operation side of the business for me. And of course, the money to get into the property is gonna depend on the size and location of the property. If you have $10,000 to $20,000, that's more than enough to do the bridge method. I personally find this strategy much better because compared to the other business models, there's way less money involved, plus you get way more cash flow. If you do the proper market research and set the property up well, you can conservatively make $2,500 a month in cash flow from one property. You want to enter the real estate game for one reason only, and that's to bring in more net income than your 9 to 5 so you can quit your job. And you want to automate the real estate income as much as possible so you can spend time doing what you love, spend more time with your family, etc. Now, if you're interested in doing the bridge method, I'm hosting a free live training where I'm going to show you exactly how I did it. You can find more details about that with the link in the description where you can register for a free spot. I hope you got some value out of today's video. If it did, give me a like, comment, subscribe, whatever these YouTubers are saying. And if you really liked it, share with someone else that might find this helpful. All right, I'll see you next video.